Hello, hello. This is Wendy Fortino, your host on WOLFpak LIVE TV. And I am so excited because I have the honor of being with the one and only Evan Centopani, who I had the pleasure of getting to know just probably a couple weeks ago. And he is a retired, maybe, professional bodybuilder.
Definitely.
He's an animal athlete, animal universal athlete, and he is a financial planner, and he's had a lot of success both on and off the stage. So we're going to talk a lot about that with him. And how are you doing tonight, Evan?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. That was really, really nice.
I mean, you totally deserve it, of course. It's such a pleasure having you on, and I can't wait to get started on this conversation. We've already had a couple great conversations, and I want to share those conversations with everybody. So that's the reason why I really want to have you on here. So right out of the gate, as if everybody doesn't probably already know you and know about you, tell me about just, first of all, your love for bodybuilding and what got you into that, because that's kind of the foundation of how everything started with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, unlike a lot of bodybuilders, you'll usually hear two stories. A bodybuilder was either like an athlete and maybe they realized, okay, maybe they weren't going to play in college, or they did play in college, but they weren't going to go pro. So they loved the training that they did while they were playing football, so they went into bodybuilding. Or you'll hear other guys say, I was really scrawny when I was younger, so I started lifting weights, I'd get picked on and stuff like that. For me, it was neither of those. I was just a really, really fat kid, and I just always hated the way I looked. But growing up in the 80s, you have all this muscular stuff around you. You've got the WWF. You've got the cartoons at the time. You've got Thundercats and He-Man, and everybody's jacked.
Yeah.
And I just loved the way that looked. Just thought it was the coolest thing ever, even though I was just a fat kid with tits. So like one day, like I'd love to look like that. And as time went on, I got closer and closer to high school. And going into high school, I finally just made the decision to get myself in shape. I was a big kid. I was like 120 pounds in first grade. I was like 220 pounds in seventh grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So going into high school, I finally made myself go for a run one day, worked my way up to running like 5 miles a day, lost 70 pounds. And that kind of changed my life. And that started everything.
That's crazy. You didn't start as an athlete. You were on a weight loss journey, and that's what sparked your desire to start bodybuilding.
Yeah, and honestly, I just always wanted to just be skinny. If I could have just been thin, I would have been thrilled. But then once I lost all that weight, but then it's like, I had this picture in my mind. Okay, once I lose all this weight, I'm going to be shredded and have a six pack, and it wasn't quite like that. I was lean, but not shredded. And I came to the realization pretty soon after, all right, I probably need to lift some weights. And then once I started doing that, I was riding my bicycle over to my uncle's house, lifting weights in his basement at 15 years old.
Yeah.
And once I started doing that, I responded really well to it.
I was going to say, you must have responded really well.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, maybe I have a bit of an aptitude for this, and I enjoy it. I was just so afraid of getting fat again, so I wasn't really eating enough. And then once I finally just kind of let it go and ate and trained, I just exploded.
You had maybe a little bit of almost anorexia because you were worried about gaining weight.
Yeah, in hindsight, I knew nothing about nutrition. I pretty much just starved myself and ran miles a day. So I probably was a little, I don't know if there's degrees to anorexia, but maybe I had a touch of it.
Yeah.
And for so long in the beginning, I'm lifting weights, trying to add muscle, but then I'm still running because I don't want to get fat. And, I just kind of let go going into my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
And I got pretty big. I was 220 pounds and had an 18 or 19 inch arm, and could bench press 405, and things just kind of exploded. And then that continued into college, and it just went like that.
Okay, so college, what did you, like, what was your focus in college? Were you thinking about your future and like what your career path would be?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, in hindsight, I think college probably made me realize that college maybe is not for everybody. I
Oh yeah,
always, I
yeah,
always did well academically. I
yeah.
graduated from high school with like a 3.97 GPA. I always put effort into my studies, my academics. It was important for me to do well. But I probably, if I was going to go and get a secondary education in anything, probably should have gone into something mechanical. I mean, I loved cars. Me and my dad restored a 69 Firebird when I was like
Oh
a
wow.
freshman in high school. And
Yeah.
I loved putting my hands on things, fixing things. And I probably, if I was really following what I was meant for, I probably should have gone into something mechanical, engineering, something of that
Yeah.
nature. But back then it was like, oh, you don't want to get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
Uh, be a doctor, be a lawyer, things like
Right.
that. And I started off as a biology major because the plan was I would like to go into medicine. And I went through 2 years of college as a biology major. And I came to the realization, like, dude, I'm not going to go to med school. Like, I'm not going to go through 8 years of schooling. And
Oh my gosh.
I don't even have the money to fund it.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so I just got a
We
general
don't have the
degree.
money to fund it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so I just got a degree in sociology and figured, okay, that could be like a good basis if I want to go on to, something else.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, it was probably a waste. It really wasn't a productive use of my time.
Right.
And I was obsessed with bodybuilding.
Yeah. So at that time, you weren't really thinking about like, how like your financial future. You were more focused on the now, your passion. You discovered the world of bodybuilding and you discovered at some point that you were really good. You obviously had like a feedback loop. So where was that moment in your career, when your
So
journey?
I got out of college, and in college, I got really big. I was like 280 pounds, and I get out of school.
Muscle this time.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, I get out of school.
You know.
I'm working out at a local world gym, and there's a dude training there, and he's big.
Yeah.
And we become friendly. We start working out together, and we become friends. And
Yeah.
he's like, dude, you should really do a show. And I was just kind of like, I thought about it. Like, that would be cool maybe someday. And he's like, no, you got to do it now. Like, you're ready now. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, look. And he told me the show. He's like, there's a show in New York. It's in 10 weeks. Just get yourself ready and I'll help you with, the last minute stuff. And I did. And I came in at the very top of the heavyweights. I was like 225 and a quarter. I was peeled. In hindsight, for a 23-year-old kid, I was pretty good.
Right.
And I won the overall at the show. But it didn't mean much. It was just like, okay, and I went back to work on Monday. And at the time I was working for a title insurance company and doing some work for a law firm with, title searching. And it was like later on that year, I went out to the Olympia to watch Gustavo Bedell compete. This is 2005. He took third place. He was a friend of a friend. And I'm working out at a gym out there, and Irvin Gelb, who did a lot of photography for Muscle Mag, is like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm nobody.
I don't know. Who am I?
You think I'm somebody? And he's like, no, like, I want you to meet, and he introduced me to Ed Connors, and Ed Connors was like, I really think you have a lot of potential. I would implore you to go watch the Nationals. It's coming up in a few weeks. I'll pay for your flight to go down and just look at it. He's like, I think once you see it, you'll feel more inclined to want to compete at that level.
Oh, wow.
So I went and I watched, and I'm going to be honest, it had the total opposite effect. I was like, these guys are so much better than me. Forget it.
Then not that Nationals isn't legit now, but it was so concentrated in the early 2000s. It was, you would see lineups that you wouldn't even see in pro lineups at national shows back in like 2005. I'm just going to say that right now.
Desmond Miller. He's a name a lot of people probably don't know. he took like, he placed, I don't know where he placed in 05 at nationals, but he came back in 06. I know because I competed against him and he won. To this day, he has some of the best legs I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everybody's like, oh, Kai's legs are crazy. Desmond's legs were crazier. Like,
Yeah.
and this was a dude who was competing at nationals. Like,
Yeah.
it was, you had some really, really extreme talent.
Yeah.
But I'm in the airport on the way back from nationals, and I end
Yeah,
up
the
sitting
opposite
next to,
effect. It had the opposite effect on you.
the opposite effect. I'm like, I'm gonna run away instead of running to it. I'm gonna run from it. So I end up sitting next to Dave Palumbo in the airport, and he's like, "You look familiar." Because at the time, Dave was doing a lot of like show coverage for his website.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You on my website? You know, did you win the Atlantic States earlier this year?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I know who you are." He's like, "You're really good. You know, what are you doing next?" And I'm like, "Nothing." He's like, "No." He's like, you have to do something." He's like, "You should really do the junior nationals." He's like, "I'll help you get ready for it." So I'm like, "All right, I guess we'll do it."
This is hilarious. Everyone's just like telling you to do it, and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, look, in hindsight, if I didn't have everybody giving me a push or other people believing in me, I probably never would have done any of it.
Wow, that's crazy. It wasn't really a deep-seated passion for you, it doesn't sound like, but you were really good.
I love bodybuilding.
You love
I love
bodybuilding.
training. Yeah. I love transforming myself, seeing and feeling the change. But I had no desire really to get on stage. Yeah, no. But Dave was like, "You have to do it. You've got to do the junior nationals." He helped me, and I won the supers and the overall.
Yeah. Yeah, he brought your name up. I was talking to him the other day, and he did bring your name up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Dave at the time was editor-in-chief of Muscular Development magazine.
Yeah.
And he was like, "You know, Steve Bleckman wants to shoot you for a cover after winning the junior nationals." And I was like, "Okay."
Everything okay. This is so
I guess we're doing this now. So I went to California.
This is hilarious.
And he shot me for a cover. But then same thing. It was like, all right, I'm going to go back to work on Monday. Yeah. But then it really kind of was like, all right, well, maybe there's something here. And Dave was like, "Look, you just won the junior nationals. You have to do nationals later this year." So I did. And that's when
you didn't wait. So you won junior nationals, but there was no pro card given at junior nationals?
No.
Oh, wow. Because now they give a lot of pro cards. Okay, keep going.
I think back then they gave a pro card for some of the female divisions.
Maybe.
But not the guys.
Yeah, it was very prestigious to get your pro card. Yeah.
It was definitely a lot harder. I mean, North Americans, they gave a pro card to the overall winner as a guy.
Wow.
USA's, they would judge the overall, and they would give pro cards to the top 3 overall at USA's.
Wow.
And then at nationals, because nationals was always considered the biggest and the most competitive, they would give a pro card to each weight class winner.
Got it.
So I go later that year and I take runner up to Desmond.
Oh man.
And I'm like, all right, well, I guess if I hit it this close on my first try, I've really got to come back here next year and try to win it. And I did.
That's awesome. That must have felt amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
It was crazy because, like, you know, a lot of people say, like, well, when did you decide you wanted to become a pro bodybuilder? And it was like, I kind of never really did. It just, I just kept taking each step, and I would have a certain amount of success, and I would say, all right, well, I guess that's a sign I should keep going. And it kind of just kept evolving.
You didn't really force it. It kind of flowed naturally. One thing we have in common is we both won the overall in our first show that we ever did. So we have that in common. But I didn't win my pro card the first. Oh, you won your pro card the second
time.
Second try, yeah. But it sounds like it just kind of fell in your lap. I think this is actually the thing that's interesting and fascinating to me is the era that you won your pro card. What was the exact year?
I won my pro card in 07.
Okay, so in 07, that was pre Instagram, and it was like right after YouTube pretty much started. So you're like in this sweet spot where it was a lot different back then. If you were discovered talent, it's like everybody would be hounding you. The magazines, every coach that existed, which there weren't very many, publishers, everyone would like be like zoned in on that fresh new talent. And so you're kind of like, I guess I'm good, but it's so not like that anymore. Anyway, what are you going to say?
I think, I'll bash social media just like the next guy, but I have to be fair.
Yeah.
There's definitely good and bad from social media. On the good side, when you compare it to the era that I got started in, the only way anyone was going to pay attention to you is if you had some competitive success.
Totally. Yeah.
Which is good and bad. Yes, it could weed out some people, but also maybe a lot of people who were deserving of attention, maybe because they have something great to offer. Look, there's a lot of brilliant guys that are not going to be good bodybuilders.
Right.
Doesn't mean they can't add something to the sport. And maybe it's a lot harder for them to gain traction. So now with social media, that's a bit easier. On the flip side of things, it used to be so hard to break into the sport that it weeded out all the con artists and all the jerk offs. And now you've got a whole lot of those people.
I know. We've got like the pros and the cons. I could not agree with you more. I think at the end of the day, I think we all use social media, to our advantage in some way, shape, or form. And with anything, it's almost like a mini Faustian bargain that we all have to make with ourselves when it comes to social media, because in order to enjoy the awesome parts of social media, we have to accept the bad parts of social media, I mean, the thing that is so funny to me is, we have a competition about physiques, and left and right, and there's like a guy who talks about this all the time on Instagram, and it's like left and right, you see people that are, competing with their bodies and then photoshopping their bodies, and it's just this crazy mind craze that I see going on social media that is just the most warped world, and it's comical almost, that I'm just like, what is going on in this world? It's so different.
I feel bad for a generation of bodybuilders that'll never know what it's like to just train.
Yeah.
Because you love it and because you want to. And maybe you got your boy, you got your training partner. I mean, like I have certain like flashbacks where it's like springtime. I'm at the gym. It's 7 o'clock at night. It's like almost dark. The doors are open. There's a breeze coming through. The music's cranking. You've got a pump. And that's all that matters. You're not taking photos. You're not taking video. You're just truly enjoying that moment. And
gosh, that's awesome. I know.
Like, a lot of people now aren't going to really know what that's like. Everything is for some type of production value. It has to be content driven.
But if you don't do it, you fall behind.
And if you don't do it, you're screwed.
You can't not, because then you fall behind. But then when you do, you lose the essence, like a little bit of the, the I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Yeah, like just kind of that nostalgia, the kind of integrity of what we once had, right?
I mean, look, some of my best memories as a bodybuilder is me at 16 or 17 years old in my parents' basement with dumbbells and a barbell and, like a small mirror that I ripped off a vanity cabinet at the dump. And I propped it up, and I've got my, my radio, and that was real, because there was nothing else. It's all that mattered. It was really, really pure.
So you were like, you discovered, obviously, the feedback loop was very strong for you. You knew you were good. You got your pro card pretty fast. You had a lot of people that believed in you, and you loved training, but you knew that you were going to be a star on that stage. And so tell me about that journey that you took. And, you know, I know maybe you didn't totally enjoy competing, but you did, and you went all in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was extremely fortunate to have a career. Listen, you're talking to a kid who was too embarrassed to take his shirt off at a pool party.
That's crazy.
So to go and have a career in a endeavor, in a sport based on your physical appearance, and to travel the world. I've been to like almost 30 countries or something like that. To travel the world and go places and like see murals of yourself, or people know who you are and say, hey, I follow you, and you know, I love your, you know, fill in the blank videos, or that's fucking wild. And like
That's crazy.
That's crazy, and that'll never not blow my mind. So I feel totally blown away to have had the career that I've had. The only not a drawback. Well, yeah, I mean, the only tough thing about a career as a bodybuilder is you reach a point. It's finite. You reach a point, and you're no longer going to compete.
Yeah.
And where other people, okay, should you find yourself 20 years in another career, well, now you're just starting to, you're becoming head honcho.
Yeah.
20 years in bodybuilding, you better have a plan B or something else you're going to do, because it's coming to an end. So, you know, people who were really diligent, you know, friends of mine who in their early 20s really buckled down and focused on something, making a shit ton of money right now.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know,
this is exactly what we were talking about the other day. Yeah.
Whereas there's other guys, and they've given their all to a sport, and they've risen to a position of prominence, but it's actually going to start going downhill.
Right.
So look, all things considered, I love that I was able to do what I did. The memories are awesome, and to still be involved with Animal, and to still be you know, immersed in the industry that I sincerely enjoy. It's good all around.
Yeah. I have a couple things I want to ask you. First, I will say that, you know, for me, what we talked about, you know, in terms of like pursuing your career and like realizing that like the competition stuff is kind of coming to a close. You know, for me personally, I'll just like inject my personal story very briefly, which is, you know, on my last show where I qualified for the Olympia, that was going to be my last show, I thought. But then when I qualified for the Olympia, I followed through and I competed in the Olympia, and now I can call myself an 8-time Olympian, and I'm excited about that. But to your point, it's like, I have been absolutely thinking about like, what's next, you know, what's my next move? Cause I can't be a highly competitive figure competitor for life. I mean, there is definitely like another chapter, right? So I just want to like throw that out there really fast. And I want to ask you something slightly, this is probably wasn't funny at the time, but when I found this out, it made me chuckle just a little bit. Okay. I'm not going to lie, but I was like, what was it that ended Evan's career? And then I discovered that you slipped on black ice and you hurt yourself, which is not funny. Okay. But tell me about that. What the heck?
Yeah, so I was like 15 weeks out. I had won the New York Pro in 09.
Yeah.
2017, I was going to do it again.
Yeah.
So I'm 15 weeks out. I'm big. I'm strong. I'm like, you know, in the mid 290s. I'm like ready to start like a really good prep.
Yeah.
And I had done some cardio that morning. There was some snow on the ground.
Right.
I got in my car. I forgot something in the house. I open the door back up, and I go back in the house. And when you start to slip and you lose your footing, if you look up the injury, right, a quadricep tendon rupture, the number one way that it occurs is slipping, because you go from your quad muscle being totally unloaded to instantly, it you know, it tightens.
Right.
And you're in this weird position, and for somebody, you know, with a large
with the more muscle you have, the more vulnerable you are to a tear.
Correct. You know, because it's going to contract that much harder, and it just is enough to rip the tendon right off the kneecap.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
So that moment was huge for you, because it was the moment where you really had to be faced with what the hell is next for Evan Centopani.
I mean, I remember literally hitting the ground. And the reason you go down, you can't stop your knee from bending because you no longer have control of your leg because the tendon isn't attached. And I remember hitting the ground, and I couldn't move my leg, and there was an immediate recognition of what just happened. I'm like, I just tore my quad tendon, and I know, I'm like, that's the number one injury you don't want. And it was like, I think my career is over. And then, you go through that phase of, okay, you know what, fuck that, I'm going to come back from it. But I wasn't right after that. Lucky for me, I never felt like being a competitor was all that there was to me.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to the beginning when
I'm the same. I'm like that too. I feel the same. Yeah. Sorry.
2006, when I first started, I was really fortunate. I had a lot of supplement companies sending me contracts, trying to sign me. And when I talked to Animal, it was a very, very different vibe from all of them.
Yeah.
And I got the sense that they were genuinely interested in me.
Right.
And they're like, we feel like you fit our brand. Like, it's cool that you compete. Like, it's all good.
Yeah.
They didn't say we don't care, but it was kind of like, we don't really care that you compete. We like the way you look. We like you. We like your attitude, everything. And, I went back and forth in my mind because signing with them, I could have made more money with other companies, but I just felt like, I just feel more at home here. And I feel like there's an opportunity for maybe a more of a long-term relationship, and really just to be around like-minded people. And that ended up all being true.
Yes, I know. 'Cause you've been with them. I think you may be across the board in all supplement sponsored athletes. You may be the longest sponsored supplement athlete across the board.
18 years.
18 years that you've been sponsored by Animal, and I thought it was your company.
a lot of people are under that impression.
Yeah, because it's like you are the face of that brand, and that's exactly what a really good brand wants. A really good, well-known person who's well liked and has a really good reputation. That's the ideal person that you want representing your brand. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of brands struggle, rightfully so, because yes, everybody wants that person who fits the brand. They make them the face. They're going to help elevate the brand. But what if that person becomes the brand?
Yeah.
Well, then you start to worry, well, if this guy wants to leave, or he gets offered more money somewhere else, then what? So I think there's a fear of that. And, eventually our relationship, that went by the wayside because we trusted each other. Yeah. And there's nowhere else I would have rather been. And I'm really proud of the fact that I was there for my career. And I didn't go from company to company, which I saw a lot of other athletes do. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I think it doesn't help your credibility when you're saying, okay, this stuff is the best. No, now this
stuff is the best. Oh, I didn't know about this stuff before. I know. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I think that also is added to your already really good reputation.
And that was the greatest thing about them as a brand. They said to me on day one, before we ever signed any contracts, they said, look, do you use our products? And no bullshit, okay? Animal Pack at 15 years old, going to GNC, right? Back then, designer whey protein was huge. That and Animal Pack were the first two products I ever used. Said, do you use our supplements? I said, well, yeah, I'm familiar. I've used your stuff. They're like, do you like it? I said, well, I like some of it. They said, well, look, we would never ask you to promote something you don't use. If you use our stuff and you like it, we hope you tell your followers about it. But I knew I wasn't going to ever be doing, these muscle tech before and after ads and kind of insulting the intelligence of people who are looking to me maybe for guidance. And for me, being able to retain my credibility was worth more than anything.
Yeah. We had a collaboration with Animal.
Yep. Yep.
And it was badass.
I've got that bag hanging up in my basement.
Do you? That's awesome. It's an awesome bag. And do you know this athlete? Do you know her?
Nadia. Yep.
Nadia, she's a badass.
She's an animal.
Yes, she is. And she was in the marketing campaign for it, and everyone loved her. She so many views, so much traction. But yeah, that was a really cool collaboration. Yeah. So WOLFpak and Animal are friends for sure.
Love that.
That's awesome. No, I agree. I think we have both seen, because you and I have been around the industry I started in 2008, so a little after you, but I've been around for a long time too. And we've seen a lot, and we both were a part of the era before social media took off. So we have seen that whole entire generational craze happen. But I don't know if I want to mention exactly the name of the company, but you probably know I'm talking about. There was a company that took off with crazy Instagram marketing, with Instagram models, and they really blew up these models, and it was huge. It was this supplement company really blew the model. It was and then everyone wanted to benchmark their marketing campaigns off of this because it seemed to be working.
East Coast company.
Yes.
Northeast.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what happened was, to your point, some of the athletes were doing weird, shady things, selling bad programs, and not giving money away to people they were promising. It was just this weird thing where they were doing things without integrity in their own personal lives, and their reputations were getting tainted, and then that tainted the brand, and the brand started letting go of all these athletes who were doing photoshopping their pictures, and they were doing shady deals with people, and they were doing all this kind of stuff. So it started tainting the brand. And that goes to your point, which is always a fear that any company would have, is when you get a bunch of people with big followings that you want to bring lots of audience, you get this huge audience, but then guess what? If the audience turns on you, you have a big audience that turns on you.
If you're selling something, I think trust is the most important factor. People have to trust you. They have to trust you. They have to trust your brand. They have to trust the product that they're buying. Yep. If you don't have that, you've got nothing. You're screwed. Yeah. And a lot of people will, for a period of time, and there've been so many brands or people who've had their 15 seconds, and they were the biggest thing since sliced bread, and they kind of were gone as fast as they came.
Yeah, we've seen them come and we've seen them go. You and I have, for sure. Yeah. What at what point? So going back to your injury, you had that injury, and then you obviously had that kind of come to Jesus moment. What is next?
Yeah.
What was next, and how did you discover this new path of financial planning and some of your other passions that you dove into?
So for me, after the injury, the goal was to get back, and compete again.
Yeah.
And Animal was entirely supportive of it, and they basically said to me, "Look, whether you compete again or you don't, it doesn't much matter to us. We feel that what you contribute to our brand doesn't really hinge on you getting on stage," which was
music to your ears.
It was really beautiful.
Yes.
So I remained focused, but a good friend of mine, been a financial planner, advisor for about over 20 years now, and he was my personal advisor for over 10 years. And he was always saying to me, "Dude, you should come work with us. You should come work with us. I think you'd like it. I think you'd like it." And after the injury, after a couple of years of it, it kind of sunk in. I'm like, you know what? I really do need to be looking at what's next. And I can't do anything. I can't do a job just to make money. I mean, I could.
No, me too. I'm with you on that.
I have to have a passion for what I do. I have to believe in it. And with the whole financial thing, we're immersed in an industry where there's people doing really well.
Yeah.
And it's always been that way. Where, and I'm speaking about athletes really in any sport. How many athletes have made a small fortune only to end up with nothing?
Right.
In other scenarios, athletes who have died prematurely and left their families with nothing. And there's an overwhelming lack of just literally planning in this industry, and people maybe not being as responsible or as thinking toward the future as they should.
Yeah.
So
it feels like it's going to last forever for some people.
No, and again, I was extremely fortunate along the way to have, my accountant to this day took me under his wing at a young age, and he's helped me ever since the beginning.
What age?
When I was about 23, we started working together.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, my grandfather was an accountant, so I mean, I started my SEP IRA when I was 22.
Wow.
So awesome. I was fortunate to just maybe have good people in my ear, and I never made.
It's never too late.
What's that?
It's never too late. I don't want people to think if they didn't start at 22, they can't get.
No, it's never too late, and you don't have to make millions of dollars to make good decisions that can be really impactful in the long run. And it's no different than bodybuilding in that you don't need to go to the gym to move mountains. Look, bodybuilding happens. It's one of the hardest sports because it takes place in milligrams of vitamins or even anabolics. It takes place in grams of protein, in ounces of water, and one rep at a time and a set at a time. It's these tiny ass increments.
Yeah.
But the financial world works the same way. You don't need to do these huge things. You just need to do small things consistently, and you need a plan. And a lot of times people don't have a plan. A lot of what you see is, again, the same thing you see in the fitness world. You'll see people doing random good things.
Right.
So, well, I work out.
Right.
I eat a lot of protein. It's just kind of these random things, but they don't have a cohesive plan.
But one thing I want to say really fast is when it comes to any plan for anything, I always look to human behavior change because that's always been one of my specialties. It's something I studied in grad school. And, when it comes to true human behavior change, the first step is always awareness. And the biggest problem with, exercise or financial planning or anything that you want to talk about is like somebody needs to be aware that a change needs to be made before they even take that first step. So it's kind of like if you have all this great information, you know how to help somebody make great decisions, but they think they're good, right? Like they love getting their like $20 worth of bagels and coffee at Starbucks every morning. They love like going on like frivolous vacations and using credit cards for it. And they are, spending money they don't have on a bodybuilding journey that has no future for them. Like these decisions, like people may think they're making good decisions. They're not aware that they're not planning well. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in a lot of industries, people who produce products, any product, oftentimes, number one, you're selling something to someone that they might want but don't need.
Right.
In the financial world,
that's a good way of putting that.
Well, most of the time you're tasked with helping someone to do something that they need. They may or may not recognize the fact that they do, in fact, need it.
Yeah.
So,
in other words, they need it, but they don't want it.
Yeah, I mean, your best customer is an educated person, and that it's no different than someone who sells a premium product. If you have a premium product, and of course it's going to cost more than something that's garbage, your best consumer is someone who's intelligent enough to recognize the value in it, despite the fact that it's more expensive. So, it takes an educated consumer, so to speak.
That is probably the best. I think I told you this before, but that's probably the best sales pitch ever. Like, a good customer of mine is intelligent, educated,
Yeah.
knows what they want in life.
Well,
And
listen,
if that is you, then you're the perfect customer for me.
I've had conversations with a lot of people who make really,
Yeah.
really good money, and not to sound insulting, but they were really ignorant.
Yeah.
And somebody like that, it doesn't matter how much money they have, they're never
Yeah.
going to be a good client.
Right, right. Well, and I mean, we see this phenomenon in, with people who win huge sums of money in the lottery, right? It's like they've spent their whole life not training the tools or learning the tools required to know what to do if they had a lot of money, right? That it's a life of just, kind of money in the pocket, money spent, money in the pocket, money. And then all of a sudden you get this big lump of money. You can't expect somebody all of a sudden to understand or have the tools. Professional athletes, people who win the lottery. I mean, it's like, I think my personal opinion is, like, if somebody is not sitting in wealth right now, it's good to imagine that you are, because if even on a small scale, on a small degree, if you think about it like that, then when it happens, as it happens, you're acquiring the tools required, necessary for, being able to manage it when it does come, right?
I mean, Wendy, I've had conversations with guys who are janitors,
Yeah.
okay, who have amassed more money than people who've made significantly more money year over year than they have, simply because their ability to live within their means.
Yeah. 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 What about bodybuilders? Do you work with a lot of bodybuilders?
Bodybuilders, various types of athletes, influencers, a growing segment of people that we've been working with are people who are having success on OnlyFans.
I was going to ask you about that. That's wow.
Because there's people who are making a lot of money on that platform. Yeah. And, an intelligent person who's making a lot of money, the first question they should ask themselves is, what's the best thing to do with this money?
Right? Yeah. What do I do with this?
Because it may not last forever.
Right.
And either way, look, it can go one of two ways.
Yeah.
If you grow up without money, you may continue to perpetuate behavior that ensures that you continue to not have it.
Yeah.
Or you may have grown up without it, and you have the fear of God stricken in you, and you say, I'm so afraid of being without it. I know what that was like. I'm not going back to that. So I am hell-bent on making the best use of this opportunity to ensure that I'm never again without money. Yes. So it can go either way. You could have two people. They both have alcoholic parents. One says, well, I became an alcoholic because my dad's an alcoholic. The other guy goes, well, I made sure I wasn't going to be an alcoholic because my dad was an alcoholic. So it depends on the person.
You're totally right. And also, I actually have a female. She was a client of mine, and she did OnlyFans and she did some other things, but she planned herself out. She invested in real estate. She got her pilot's license. She did all these things with this. She had a massive amount of money that she acquired, but she did things with it and set herself up for the future. Now she's no longer doing that. And she's married. She's happy. She's a pilot. She does all these awesome things and she's very successful. And to your point, I mean, yeah, she started off with that, but she was like, wow, I've got all this money. And she started like figuring out what to do with all of it and how to plan her future.
None of us know what the future is going to hold.
Yeah.
And, so you're not going to live your life thinking, well, I might die tomorrow. So no, you don't want to live that way.
Right.
You need to live in the moment. You need to enjoy your life. But there should be a certain amount of planning that's done for the future.
Right. I agree. So you tell me about the kind of the variety of people that you work with. You have bodybuilders, you have OnlyFans.
Yeah. A lot of said the one thing that most of them have in common is that they're some form of entrepreneur. Right. Yes, we do work with people who maybe work in a corporate environment. They're employees,
Okay, I have a spicy question for you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, you don't have to give any names or any like specifics, but what is the craziest client that you have worked with? And like, what is the story? Like, put me through that. And I said
Crazy.
spicy, so like the craziest. You're like,
I mean, some of the OnlyFans scenarios. I mean, I guess that those are
yeah,
pretty spicy.
that is pretty spicy.
But you'd be surprised because when you have conversations with people. I mean, the two people who are clients of ours who are really successful with it, they're husband and wife.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I guess they've gotten into more risque things, but when you speak to them, I mean, they're sweetheart people.
Oh, you mean OnlyFans, husband and wife?
Yeah.
Like husband and wife that does OnlyFans together.
They do it together.
What? Oh
Yep.
my gosh. What?
And
Oh my gosh.
extremely well. And they're
Hey, I'm not gonna judge that.
They're absolute sweethearts. So yeah, it's you get some maybe some eccentric people.
Yeah.
But usually they don't become clients because one of the things that I've kind of learned to do early on is, you kind of vet people. It's not like, can I have this person as a client? It's, do I want this person as a client?
Yeah. It's like that with anything, right? It's a two-way street. And I think that, that customer is always right mentality is not a good approach if you want to help somebody, because if somebody feels that they should always be right because they're giving you money, they may never actually be helped. The best interest of somebody may not be, what they want it to be.
Well said. Extremely well said. Some people, and it's not to say that they can't be helped, but maybe I'm just not the guy.
Yeah. I'm just not the guy. Yeah. But you also do coaching. So you do a lot of things. Like, what all are you juggling right now? I'm trying to what do you do?
So the bodybuilding coaching is something I've retained just because I enjoy, and I had so many people from over the years where word of mouth spread. And when people, and I don't really advertise it much, but when people email me about it, again, assuming the person, I get the sense that they're sane and I would enjoy working with them. It's more of a passion play. So I'll say yes. But it's not my main, not my main gig by any means. No, it's really the financial planning and advising. And I've been really fortunate to work with a really talented group of guys. And they're not really your typical crew. So
you're talking about your financial planning, like
the financial planning world is kind of filled with there's a lot of shitheads who will just try to sell people things.
Of course.
Luckily, all of us do really well. We don't need to sell shit to people just to sell them stuff. And that's, I could have, going back to 2006 when companies were approaching me, I could have opted for, a bigger paycheck to tell people, hey, I owe everything to this whey protein.
Yeah.
But that's just not my style. And I'd like to go back and shake younger Evan's hand and say, wow, you realized pretty young how important that was, because it's that credibility that's carried me.
Right.
To right up to present day.
Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head. I think that, there's a lot of people that do financial planning. There's a lot of people that do coaching. There's a lot of people that do certain paths, right? But the constant in people who are really successful at it is the integrity behind it. Living your everything that you do with integrity, staying with the supplement company as long as you have, and, having integrity with financial planning. I mean, early on in your career, obviously, if you're new and you don't have a lot of clients yet, it's going to take some time to build that rapport and build that credibility, but eventually people find out. And eventually you start stacking up your Rolodex with people that want to work with you, and word of mouth starts flying. And then you have people, probably your, people that are doing the same thing as you, jealous and wondering like why you're getting all the clients. It's because you have integrity,
One of the things that makes it hard, and it doesn't matter what you do, what you're selling, what service you offer, is refraining from telling people that some sort of magic exists. And you see it with coaches.
That's hard for people.
In the financial world, you see it with people selling supplements. There's people that are positioning themselves as if to say, I've got the secret.
But it works short term for people. That's the problem.
The reality is there is no secret.
Yeah.
And I'm very upfront with people, no matter what type of business transaction it is, to say there is no secret. There only exists the fundamentals,
right?
The proper execution of them over a long enough period of time. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking bodybuilding, whether we're talking finances, whether we're talking you pursuing a career in anything. There's no magic. There's just the basics, and you have to do them. You have to do basic things really, really well over and over and over and over. And it's not sexy, but it's what works.
Well, there's two things going on here that you just made me think of. Okay. The first one is, for you to, really stress the fact that it's not magic. Okay. You're going to bring people in who are more like realistic, but they're going to be long-term clients, and long-term clients is going to be beneficial for both you and the client, because it takes a long-term commitment on their end to be successful financially. And it takes a long-term commitment with you for you guys both to build trust. On the other flip side of that, when people are, more interested in the revolving door, because there's a lot of people that want a financial planner, like for only 2 seconds, and then they want to move on, just like anything in life, right? There's like people that just want that like quick shiny object because it sounds like, sexy in the moment. And then they're not long-term people anyway. There are a lot of those. So there are financial planners that probably are successful just with like the revolving door of people.
Oh, they're gonna
be successful that way.
It's what's sexy and shiny and exciting today. And I don't know. It's a lot of bullshit. Yeah. You see the same thing. You see the same thing in the bodybuilding industry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, this guy coached so and so, and he looks great. Well, he must have the secret. And if he coaches me, he's going to use that secret. These guys are all incredibly talented genetically. These bodybuilders, and yes, there's good coaches. But a good coach is going to tell you, dude, I don't have the secret. Like, there's no, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's so, oh my gosh, I could not agree with you more. And Evan, you're just like a wealth of knowledge. I think somebody said that, like, oh my goodness, Evan is just a wealth of knowledge. He has such great insight on so many different things. I personally have been able to experience that, and I'm so grateful for you and your time. You're an amazing person.
You know what? Thank you. And I'm glad I've got to know you. I feel the same way about you. I'm glad you've had me on. And, a message to everybody out there, I'll speak to the way that Wendy and I connected. It was literally just, we ended up in a conversation. It's like, hey, let's chat. Let's see what you've got going on. I'll show you what I've got going on. A lot of times, networking, people are really closed off, and I think there's a lot of missed opportunity. People should try to say yes more often. Not yes to bad things, but
right.
But you never know. I mean, there's so many times where maybe reluctantly I did something. There was nothing on the surface. There was nothing in it for me.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me to do something. I did it. And you'd be shocked what it led to.
Yep.
So guys, there's a whole world out there that it's not really part of your, and I don't want to sound like a weirdo. Maybe it's not part of your conscious effort, but it exists. And if you just find yourself in different situations, you'd be surprised what comes out of it.
Oh God, you just like sparked a whole nother conversation that I want to have with you. about this topic, I genuinely want to go on another tangent about this. I'm gonna have you back because that is a whole nother conversation that I definitely want to have with you. So
I guess
maybe
I'll have to come back.
if you're willing to come back, I'm definitely gonna have you back. So that's a yes.
That's a yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Evan, it has been so wonderful. Don't go anywhere. I want to say goodbye to you on the flip side.
Okay.
And I just want to thank everybody who came into our live and everybody who is going to watch this great information in this podcast. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Evan. And until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.